What's up, guys? Today's video is going to be a little bit different. If you've been following along on the YouTube channel, I've been doing videos focused on practices like rituals, breath work, those kinds of things, as well as a few informative historical videos. But if you have been to my blog, you probably know that I do regular book reviews over there. And so I wanted to start doing some video book reviews as well. Since I like other people's video book reviews, thought I would try it out. Starting today with this book called Real Magic by Dean Radin. So hopefully that's visible there on the screen. This book was a surprise for me last year. Out of all of the books that I read, this was one of the most mind-blowing, paradigm-shifting books of the year. Even up there with things like The Immortality Key, which was definitely paradigm shifting. So, Real Magic is very interesting because Dean Radin is a scientist and he explores the possibilities of things like ESP, remembering, prior lives or remote viewing, all these kinds of things that a lot of people just automatically assume are impossible or nonsensical. And he takes a very scientific approach to their study to see if there is any possibility of these things, are they real, etc. So I want to start out by reading a quick blurb here from the front of the book because I think it's really cool and gives you an idea of exactly what he's talking about. This book is about magic. Not the fictional magic of Harry Potter, the feigned magic of Harry Houdini, or the fraudulent magic of con artists. Not blue lightning bolts springing from the fingertips, aerial combat on broomsticks, sleight of hand tricks, or any of the other elaborations of artistic license and special effects. This book is about real magic. Real magic falls into three categories: mental influence of the physical world, perception of events distant in space or time, and interactions with non-physical entities. The first type I'll call force of will. It's associated with spell casting and other techniques meant to intentionally influence events or actions. The second is divination. It's associated with practices such as reading tarot cards and mirror gazing. And the third is theurgy, from the Greek meaning God work, and it involves methods for evoking and communicating with spirits. Very interesting opening for a book about science, written by a scientist, but I swear it is written in a very careful, systematic, and academic way. So he's not making any wild, broad claims or exaggerated conclusions. He writes very much like any scientist would write if you've ever read an academic paper or a research paper or something like that. You know, they're very open about their methodology, about possible biases, about, possible further exploration or study that needs to be done. And he definitely writes this book in that way, while tackling topics that most other scientists would never even dare to look into. So that's one of the reasons that I really love this book. There has been a lot of talk about magic lately, and a huge increase in spirituality, magic, witchcraft, and the occult, especially since the recent pandemic further eroded trust in mainstream narratives, traditions, and institutions. This has had both positive and negative effects. On one hand, a lot of those old narratives needed to be challenged, but unfortunately, we're lacking powerful and effective replacements in a lot of situations. And that has left room for the current meaning crisis and the rise of New Age charlatans. Now, To be fair, charlatans are not just a New Age problem. They've clearly been around for all of human history, and any review of human history will show that there have always been snake oil salesmen, con artists, and other charlatans operating. But that's why it's so refreshing to come across someone like Dean Radin in this book, Real Magic. Dean is the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences and professor of integral and transpersonal psychology at the California Institute of Integral Studies. And one of the things that I like about him is that he asks questions and explores possibilities that most people too readily ignore and just automatically assume are impossible or nonsensical. And in doing so, he reveals both profound truths about the nature of reality and the limitations of our current systems of scientific discovery. Namely, the artificial limits that we place on ourselves by limiting which questions we ask in the first place. I'm referring to the limits of scientism, not the scientific method in itself. Scientism is the dogmatic belief that certain things are possible and others are not. And scientism limits us because it results in people not asking certain questions because they think they already know the answer. So then scientism is itself anti-scientific. And that's one of the things that Dean avoids in this book. Instead of just assuming that something is impossible, you just ask the question, is this possible? And can we design an experiment to prove that? And he goes through his methodology and the way that he designs his experiments, and he also talks about other people's work as well. In Real Magic, Dean asks questions like, is ESP possible? If so, to what extent? And can we replicate that in controlled conditions? And what might a scientifically informed vision of magic look like? He also explores the history of magic and shows that, what was called magic 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago is just medicine or physics or something today. So basically what we've called magic throughout human history has fallen into one of two categories. It's either been some process that we just don't understand yet. We didn't understand germs made people sick, so people thought it was spirits and they thought they could magically heal themselves. Till we figured out how to see germs through microscopes and invented antibiotics and so on. Or the other category is that it fell into a religious practice of some group other than your own. So throughout all of human history, when people talk about their own groups, religious rituals and ceremonies and practices, their spiritual practices, prayers, rituals, etc. But when they would view someone else's prayers, rituals, ceremonies, spiritual practices, that they called magic, because they didn't understand it. So I think our definition of magic has been troublesome throughout most of human history, and I think we're at a very interesting place where we have the opportunity to change that and to embrace real magic. Alright, so take a look at this table of contents page here. If you can see that the first 4 chapters here, so beginning, science and magic, magical potpourri, and origins of magic, you can see there, all 4 of those chapters deal with the history of magic, so what I was just talking about. But then he moves on, and the middle part of the book is a review of all of the scientific evidence for these different forms of magic. And that's where he talks about his own methodology, his own experiments that he's done at his lab here in California. And he talks about other evidence for things like psychokinesis or remote viewing, etc. And he presents some really interesting data Now, it's not going to be huge numbers and huge effects. Once again, this isn't, Hollywood magic. This is real magic. So what he's doing is he's testing and observing statistically significant, but otherwise relatively small effects of consciousness altering reality in ways that we don't really understand mechanistically at this point in time. So, don't expect any overblown claims or anything like that in that section, but I have to admit I found several of my opinions on certain things changed greatly based on the evidence that he provided in that section. And the last part of the book deals with magical practices that he has found to be effective at developing intuition and these other kinds of consciousness-related skills and abilities that we like to call magic. And then he also talks about what he calls Merlin-class magicians. So these are a few rare individuals throughout human history who have displayed those really powerful magical effects that he hasn't been able to replicate in the lab. Most people probably won't ever be able to do, but there are certain people who have skills and abilities that are beyond most other human beings. This is true in every realm, at least until someone figures out how to teach those skills to someone else. So think about, for instance, Wim Hof was someone who changed our paradigm about our ability to control our autonomic nervous system and our immune system with just our mind. So he was able to prove that it is in fact possible and that he could teach other people to do it as well. So if you think about that, a few hundred years ago, that definitely would have been called magic. He might have been burned or something, but now we've been able to scientifically study it. We can't explain it mechanistically, but we can show that it is possible, it's happening, and he can teach it to other people. So if you don't know, he did an experiment where he was injected with E. coli and was able to suppress all response to it just with his mind. No breath work, no cold exposure, nothing, just mental. Scientists thought, okay, well, he's just a freak. No one else can do that. So he said, no, I'll bring 20 people in, give me a few days with them, I'll teach them how to do it. So he spent 4 days teaching these people. They were all injected in a lab with E. coli. No one showed any response to it at all. No one got sick, nothing. So, magic in some forms is real. And it is usually brought forward as a new opportunity or a new vision for human potential through someone like a Merlin-class magician, someone who dared to believe that something was possible that everyone else said is impossible, you can't do that, humans have this limit, that limit, etc. But certain people refuse to believe that, and they push the limits of human potential. Those are the Merlin-class magicians. And I don't want to spoil it for you. You should read the book, once again, Real Magic by Dean Radin, so you can learn about those extraordinary human beings who seem to have been able to do things that most other people can't do, at least yet. Alright, so that's it for this review and this video. Once again, book is Real Magic by Dean Radin, PhD. And I will put a link in the description if you're interested in picking up a copy. And there is also going to be a link to my book review on my blog for anyone who wants to read that. And check out my other book reviews on my blog as well. If you're interested, I've done some reviews on The Immortality Key, as well as Recapture the Rapture. Both of those books I think are absolutely phenomenal, and I think everyone should read them. They're also kind of in that paradigm shifting realm. I did a book review as well on a book called The Awakened Brain. Let's see here. By Lisa Miller. Another paradigm shifting work. This one's Recapture the Rapture here. So if any of those are interesting to you, go check out my blog, read the book reviews, and I'll have book review videos for all those coming soon. All right, thanks for watching and have a good day.